Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast. I almost said YouTube Live because that's what we did last time, just yesterday. Hey, um, Parker Thune, Brandon Drum. I am down in Fort Worth. Parker will be here tomorrow. I showed up early. My son plays early. They're playing for the 7-on-7 DR7 national title tomorrow and Sunday. And there are teams from all over the United States here. There's also the 027 right down the road that's going on as well. But Parker was there last week, and we can discuss that later on this podcast. But on this one, we are going to talk about, we get a practice viewing today. We're recording this on a Friday night. It is 10:15 p.m. Michael Fasusi, 5-star offensive lineman out of Louisville, the 2025 class, made a surprise visit. He texted me earlier this morning. Colin Kennedy was first to report it. I then talked to Fasusi. He confirmed it and then gave some quotes, and we have all that over there on OU Insider VIP. 2026 4-star quarterback Dereon Coleman was also in town. I spoke to him and his trainer, Balin, who brought him down to Oklahoma City. We have that as well. That's going to be an interesting topic of conversation, as well as Oklahoma making a run at former Oklahoma State 4 or 5, whatever you want to call, whatever he plays, post player, Brandon Garrison, former OK Preps, McDonald's All-American, one of the top transfer portal players in the country. Obviously, you got Padula in town from Virginia Tech. There is so much to talk about on this podcast, and we're going to cover it right here, Parker.
Yeah, as long as you're not paying any attention to softball, there's a lot to be excited about right now if you're a Sooner fan. Softball's kind of taking it on the chin lately. Not sure what's up with that, but
Did they lose again
they
today?
lost again tonight, 9-4 to BYU, a 21-18
What?
BYU team, I think. So, yeah, Patty and the girls got some stuff to figure out, but look, they're the 3-time defending national champions. I trust that they will. But on the football side, things are good, man. We did get a practice viewing period today. That was fun. The Sooners are a little bit banged up, got some certain positions, and we'll dive more into that. But on the whole, the guys that we did get to see, there's a lot to be encouraged about in that regard. Obviously, recruiting is hot right now with the recent additions of Marcus Wimberly, Trent Wilson, and Malik Hawkins. And on the basketball side, man, I'm telling you, if basketball intel is what you want, if that moves the needle for you, there is no better place than OUinsider.com because our man Brody Lusk is on top of everything. I mean, this guy has dominated the portal intel game from an OU perspective from the jump. He's had up to the minute updates on Padula, on Brandon Garrison, on Kevin Overton, on several other portal targets for Oklahoma. So if you want to know what's going on in that department beyond what Brandon and I can and will tell you on this podcast, OUinsider.com is the place to be. Brody's had a running transfer portal thread for almost 3 weeks now, I think.
Dude, there's so many comments on that thing.
Yep. And it's live.
Yeah, I'm interested. Like, I'm gonna look right now because I want to see how many views that thing has gotten. It has gotten 40,000 views. That thing has been rocking and rolling. It's almost over 400 comments. So I mean, that thing has been going and a blowing. So I almost took us off the rails there for a second, but I want to keep us back on track. Let's talk about the practice today, man, because to me, and we reported this on OU Insider, and I know there were some people that were surprised to see Jake Sexton at left guard. If you're on OU Insider, you knew that. You knew that. You knew that was taking place and that was going to take place the rest of the spring. But let me tell you all this. He is not a guard. He will not play guard come the season. He will be your left tackle. Like, that is happening. It's done. Like, that's happening. He is a potential first round pick or first first 2-day pick. They absolutely love him at Oklahoma. And the reason why they love him, Parker, is because he does things like that. Like, it is really hard to get somebody to slide inside like that, even for a spring, with all the scouts, right? With all the media that shows up to spring practices. And everybody goes, oh, Michael Tarquin took his spot at left tackle. No, they're banged up. Garen Hatchett isn't available. Troy Everett is not available at center. Therefore, Josh Bates can't slide over to guard and leave Sexton at tackle. So, and I guess you could slide Tarquin in, but it makes more sense for somebody that knows the offense. He can be really close to Josh Bates. He's the one that's helping Josh Bates make the calls, call the blocking assignments, call the protection slides, all those type of things. Jake Sexton's the one in charge. And so you have him closer, therefore communication's easier, right? It's all in helping the youngsters. The same reason why he worked at the twos at left tackle for the majority of the spring, because they needed somebody to teach them the calls, to teach them what to do on certain situations, on certain fronts, on certain blitzes, all that type of stuff. So he's been the leader. And as one source said it, because the offensive line room is so young, he said, and I quote, Jake Sexton is daddy in that room. So that is the way it rolls right now. So nobody needs to, start freaking out and start thinking, oh, that's how bad it is. He's playing. No, that's how injured OU is, Parker.
Yeah,
They're not doing great on offensive line, but that's how injured they are right now.
Yeah, and look, man, everybody was, and all the Texas trolls, all the Doomer OU fans were in my Twitter mentions earlier today because I posted a clip in which, like, I'll just be straight up. Woody Washington manhandles Logan Howland off the edge. Like, Woody flies in, he's playing cheetah on this play. He rushes. Logan Howland's at left tackle. It's the second team offense against the first team defense. And Woody just gets right there in between his shoulder pads and chucks him.
Is that the one where Hawkins had to like errant throw to the side, out to the side?
Yeah, he had to get it out.
Yeah,
he had to throw it away.
Yep.
But I mean, Woody
he was going to
just
get sacked if he didn't. Yep.
Yeah, Woody just throttles Howland on this play.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, everybody's in my mentions going, oh my goodness gracious, Oklahoma's going to be terrible on the offensive line. Is this really what it looks like? First off, this is the nature of intra-squad competition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody wins a rep, somebody has to lose a rep. And when it's Oklahoma on one side and Oklahoma on the other side, if one Oklahoma player is going to win a rep, another Oklahoma player has to lose a rep. And that, folks, is an example of a sixth-year senior defensive back and a really freaking good one who's going on his fifth year of starting at the Power 4 level against a redshirt freshman offensive tackle who has only played the position for 2 years and is very much still in the developmental stage. And you're probably not going to see him on the field this fall in any meaningful situation unless the injury bug bites and bites hard. So Woody Washington manhandling a second string offensive tackle. I'm sorry, but like I refuse to see that as the herald of doom for Oklahoma's offensive line play in 2024.
Yeah, I don't either. And it's not sunshine pumping. It's that we saw the first team offensive line, and did they look great? No. Did they look good? I'll put it to you like this. Jackson Arnold had plenty of time to throw when we were watching. Did you see Jackson Arnold get like severely rushed where he didn't have time? I'll say we were watching that 2-minute warning. You know what I noticed? That secondary is really good. He got a good throw in to Jaden Gibson. Outside of that, there was like they were covered.
And it's a different conversation, right? It's a different conversation if it's Jake Sexton that's getting steamrolled by Woody Washington.
Yes,
That's no disrespect to Logan Howland. I think he's going to be a good player, but he's obviously not
he's
there
not
yet,
there.
right? And or it's a different conversation if, say, it's, I don't know, pick a brand new. Well, I'll use brand new freshmen are really, really good. Let's just say it's a walk on that's throttling Logan Howland off the edge. Okay, then again, like maybe you have an issue on your hands, but it's a 6th-year senior against a redshirt freshman. One has played power 4 ball for 5 full seasons, and the other, I want to say he played like 12 snaps last year, 12
Yeah.
garbage time snaps, and that was it. So once again, let's all be reasonable. Let's all take it with a grain of salt or multiple grains of salt. Woody Washington beating a backup offensive tackle off the edge does not mean Oklahoma's offensive line sucks. Does it have problems right now? Absolutely.
Yes.
It's problems they're working through. And it doesn't help that they're banged up. But that alone does not signify that Oklahoma is a lost cause up front offensively in 2024.
So there's also this debate on OU Insider VIP, and I kind of started this debate. Just was kind of devil's advocating everything that they were saying about do we really know how good this defense is, right? Because they're going up against this offensive line. Do we really know how good such and such is because they're going up against such and such? Well, first things first, if your defense isn't winning in spring, you've got bigger problems because 9 out of 10 times your defense should be light years ahead of the offense springtime. And that's why it was always weird under Muleshoe, right? Like where you saw the offense have such success all the time against the defense, and you're like, okay, it's because the offense is so good. And inversely, there could be the struggles. Yes, they're struggling because they're injured. They're struggling because they're inexperienced. All those things are causing issues right now. But you want to know what else causes an issue? Having a top 5 SEC defense you're going up against. And when I say top 5, I'm talking about experience. Top 5 in experience in the whole conference. And that may be top 2 or 3 in experience as far as returning stars. They returned 9 starters. They've got a ton of experience on the guys that did not start that filled in those positions. So there is a lot of issues that comes with that. Like it just, when you're going up against that type of experience, when you're going up against that type of talent that Oklahoma has accrued on the defensive side of the ball, things get a little bit more prickly when you're in offense. And particularly when they're calling things, they're scheming up against what you're doing on purpose. And I was told this by multiple sources. Like I talked to multiple sources today on the way down and yesterday, just having to be making phone calls. I was told they are actively trying to confuse the offensive line and Jackson Arnold as much as they possibly. They're throwing things at them that you will not see in 99.9% of the games. And the reason why they're doing that is so come fall, they're more prepared for the normal stuff they're going to see. They're not going to freak out over something semi-hard as far as adjustments having to be made, as far as protections need to be called, as blitzes coming, as far as rolling your coverages certain ways, like those type of things that Jackson and the offensive line are going to have to read and, pre-diagnose, pre-snap, and then post-snap, right? They're having to learn that stuff now in the spring at a much higher level, and is essentially to make them super uncomfortable, because when it comes to fall camp, it's more preparing your team for the season. This is preparing your team for the season, but it's seeing who's going to buckle under pressure too, right? It's seeing what they have, right? And what do they need to go get in the portal. And the only way to do that is to cause as much, pressure to see how much they bend. The players that break and the players don't get it. Those are the ones that aren't going to play, and they're going to go find somebody to replace you. And so that is where they're at right now with spring. That's why spring is really hard, Parker, to really diagnose, the good and the bad sometimes. But I think it's fairly obvious that the OU defense is going to be really good. And speaking of good, by the way, Jacoby Johnson on the first team defense.
I'll tell you what, and you weren't there for it, but after practice, when we got to do interviews with the players, we talked to Jaden Gibson, and I asked Jaden Gibson, hey, who's catching your eye in the secondary? Take a guess.
Jacoby Johnson.
Yes, indeed. He went on for quite a while about how good Jacoby Johnson has been, how much better he looks this year than he did last year, and how much he has learned and matured and continued to make life difficult for those Oklahoma wide receivers in a scrimmage setting.
Yeah, no, he has been from the get-go this spring, the guy that everybody's talked about. I'll read a quote. I'll pull it up. Was talking to somebody during practice today, just kind of shooting the breeze, trying to, I guess, for all intents and purposes, fill out their thoughts on Jacoby Johnson. And this person knows ball. And this person, above all, will know more of what's going on with Jacoby than anything else as far as how things have gone, what people are saying, all that type of stuff. So I walk up to him. I said, did you see Jacoby playing first team? Yes, that was something that has been happening. Jacoby's super psyched about all that, blah, blah, blah. And then they said this, and this person's, what they said, you have to know that it matters. So his size, his speed, his natural ability, it quite possibly is the best that OU has seen in over a decade at corner. What Jacoby needs to do is to continue to grasp the middle parts, and he will be so special. And that seems to be the consensus when you talk to people. That almost exact phrase has been echoed by not one, not two, not three, 4 different people inside the Switzer Center so far this spring. Almost like he is so big, he is so strong, he is so fast, he's so agile, he's so athletic, he's so physical at the point of attack. Sometimes he's just because he did not play basketball the majority of his life. He only started really focused on football sophomore, junior, senior year, right? So 3 years coming into Oklahoma. And the first season he was wide receiver. They finally started teaching him defense junior and senior year. So he had 2 years of learning. And in the midst of all that learning, he didn't get to go to the meetings that everybody else did because he was doing AAU basketball. Because guess what he was, Parker? He was a Power 5, Power 4 basketball star as well. Had offers from Michigan, Oklahoma State, North Carolina, OU, TCU, everybody in basketball. So when it comes to that, he just didn't get the learning. So he's getting a crash course, Jay Valai right now. And you and I both saw it, right? And you can expound on this. When we got to watch that hour and a half and that hour 45-minute practice, the one thing that was most notable was anytime Jacoby made a mistake, he stopped everything and literally walked him through it and gave him 2 extra reps to fix it. I didn't see him do that for very many other people, just letting you know. And it's like they want him, they want Wagner, they want and I think it's the guys that they feel are going to really help them this year. Obviously, Vickers, who's the oh my gosh, Des Malone, Woody, obviously Gentry Williams. Like those are the guys that you see getting those extra reps, right? Because they're going to be the guys that are going to be on the field most of the time. Does that make sense?
It does. I'll tell you another takeaway I had from watching practice today is, and I hadn't really gotten the chance to see it as close as I did today, but I spent a good deal of time over with that linebacker group.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's the most overplayed. I know everybody has said it. Zach Alley is literally Brent Venables. Like, I walk over there and I'm not looking at who's coaching them. I'm just looking at I'm just looking through the camera lens, trying to pick out players, trying to get decent shots. And all the while I'm listening and I'm hearing them get coached up. Like they're running through drills, and I'm hearing who I identify to be Brent Venables, coaching them, shouting at them, walking them through everything. And I take the camera lens away from my face for a second, and it's this much younger individual in a blue long sleeve shirt and an OU hat. I'm like, oh, that's not Brent Venables. That is his mini me. That is Zach Alley.
So you can confirm that he is mini me.
Like, I tell you, man, if you did not have your eyes to rely on, if you could not visibly tell, okay, like that's Zach Alley and Brent Venables, if you were listening to practice but not watching it and you were facing the other direction, you could not tell. Like you literally would not be able to tell whether it's Brent Venables or Zach Alley coaching those linebackers up, because even in the tone of their voice, they sound exactly the same.
So I didn't spend as much time as you did with him, but I walked by and kind of stopped for about 2 or 3 minutes. And he basically said, if you're late in transition, coming out of your break, 5 up downs for every time I catch you. False stepping, 5 up downs for every time I catch you. Like he's making sure they do everything right. Like every step is correct. And we've heard that about Brent Venables' defense, right? Like it's been what I think Danny Stutzman said it, where if you're just even off by like half a yard, you can screw the whole thing up for them as far as what he's called, because it almost has to be perfect. And so that's why they're so meticulous about everything, right? Like every step, where your eyes are at, coming out of the breaks, all that stuff, the timing of it matters. And so it's, oh man, somebody with a engine or a motorcycle or something in the background. I apologize. But it's kind of funny. And I thought the same thing. I was like, that sounded so much like BV. Like, but he doesn't have BV's raspy voice, by the way. That's the only thing that I took from that. But mannerisms was to a T, bro.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There's
To a
so
T.
much similarity in the way that he operates. And it's very easy to tell that's a guy that's been influenced by Brent Venables literally since he began his coaching journey.
Mhm.
Like
Absolutely.
you are in a lot of ways the sum of your influences. And Zach Alley has had other influences, certainly. He had some time up at Boise State working under Spencer Danielson. He worked for Terry Bowden at ULM. Obviously, he was most recently at Jacksonville State with Rich Rodriguez, but he most resembles Brent Venables in every imaginable way. And that's going to be a cool dynamic.
Oh, you didn't see Brent hovering around the linebackers either because of that, right? Like
No.
there's a trust. That's the first time we've ever gone to practice. Well, I take that back. Every viewing, he has not been hovering around the linebackers, but it was the first time that we have been over at the outdoor fields, because everything we've done has been indoors up to this point, right? That you didn't go over on the far side, right, and see BV working and coaching the linebackers. it was Skalski and obviously Zach Alley. That's who was coaching the linebackers. And Rufus obviously is always over there. But like that was interesting because BV just kind of hovers around and talks and watches everything. Like it's CEO Brent right now, right? Like that's a different Brent Venables than what we're used to seeing, Parker.
He's got, and I actually asked Samuel Masigo about this after practice too, because I think he was the one linebacker that we got to talk to. And I asked him, hey, like now that Zach Alley's here, how much time does Brent Venables spend with you guys versus just bouncing around in different position groups? And he didn't necessarily portray it as a steep or a sizable difference, but he definitely acknowledged, hey, like Brent isn't right up on us. He isn't pouring all of his time and energy during the practice session into coaching linebackers. No, he's getting around to every single position group and he's making sure they're doing what they need to be doing and giving them some additional oversight and insight. And that's the luxury of having a guy like Zach Alley on board, is because Zach Alley knows everything that Brent Venables wants to do, because he has spent, well, I guess he hasn't spent longer than any other staffer with BV, but I would say with it, like within the confines of what, the last 10, 15 years, there's nobody that has spent more time around Venables in that window than Zach Alley. He was an assistant to Venables at Clemson for what, 8 years maybe?
8 years.
So yeah, at least recently, like I think when you listen to Venables talk about the trajectory of his coaching journey, it's pretty clear that those were some formative years that he spent at Clemson. They weren't the formative years, but he learned a lot in the decade that he spent as defensive coordinator at Clemson, and he changed a lot. And so as Brent Venables was kind of reinventing himself, Zach Alley was right there actively getting molded by the best defensive line in college football. And so like, again, it's going to be a super cool dynamic at Oklahoma because Brent Venables is 53 years old, right? He's not old by coaching standards, but he's also no spring chicken. And so as you have
He's actually a young coach, right? 53 is kind of young, right?
Yeah. So as you have BV entering whatever the twilight of his career looks like, I don't know how long he wants to coach. Maybe he wants to coach till 60. Maybe he wants to coach till he's 75. But whenever that time comes, man, you're going to have Zach Alley just entering the prime of his career as a coach, because he is still, by anyone's standard, very young. 31 years old, and he's the co-defensive coordinator at the University of Oklahoma. He's got a lot of good years ahead of him, and I think you would hope that the majority, if not all of those good years, come at the University of Oklahoma.
So when are we going to get to interview him?
I don't know, man. I hope it's soon.
Spring game. They're going to make. They're obviously waiting until spring game.
Well, yeah, I guess if the spring game rhythm is what it is, I guess aligns with what the rhythm typically is in season, then yes, we'll get to talk to Zach Alley at the spring game, which would be great.
It'll just be a cluster of people that never come to the practices.
Or here's my question though, and I'm processing this in real time. He's not defensive coordinator; he's co-defensive coordinator. So, do we get a Zach Alley press conference after every single day, the way that we did, or after every single game, the way that we did with Ted Roof, who was the sole defensive coordinator?
But he wasn't, because co-DC for Todd Bates, co-DC for Valai.
Yeah, sure. Those guys were co-DC.
He was co-DC, but he was co-DC title as well, as far as I remember.
No, Ted Roof, like he had the DC.
He actually had the DC title.
Yeah. And so that's why we were all kind of assuming that Zach Alley was just going to have the principal DC title. But when he was,
I bet you they did that to keep him away from the media.
And that may be true. I don't know.
Well played. OU, well played. But we still want to interview him. I mean, dadgum, like he's been in Norman for almost 5 months now. Like this is
3 months.
Has it been 3 months?
Yeah. 3
No,
months.
but they hired him when I was in Colorado at Chris Butte.
Correct. Which was over
It's
New Year's.
April,
wasn't it?
bro. January, February, March, April.
I believe it was the second week of January that they officially hired him, which is almost
It's the
exactly 3
second week of
months.
April. So January, February, March. Okay, I'm sitting here going 1, 2, 3, 4. If that's why. Okay, fair enough. But anyways,
Math is hard.
3
That's why
months.
we're in journalism.
Yep. There you go. I still we should have already interviewed him. I'm not going to go there though. Let's talk about players on campus before we go to. But we'll close it out with basketball with Padula and Garrison and I guess Overton. But those Garrison and Padula, excuse me, Brendan Garrison, former McDonald's All-American, Dell City, superstar, post player, played at Oklahoma State, was one of the top freshmen in the Big 12 this past season, visiting Oklahoma this weekend, and things. As Michael Scott says, the turntables have turned, and it seems like it went from OU to Oklahoma State back to OU there, and we'll discuss that here in a minute. Padula from Virginia Tech, one of the top guards in the country at Oklahoma at this point. He's originally from Oklahoma, so we'll see there. Something tells me that those two know each other. It's just a guess. But on the football side of things, do we start with Fasusi, the 2025 5-star offensive lineman?
Yeah, let's start
Discuss
there.
that. Okay. Let's start there. I have not talked to him since the visit. I did talk to him prior to the visit. He was very excited. It was a spur of the moment visit, Parker. Like, remember, I actually post, folks that don't know that aren't on OU Insider. I literally posted something from a conversation I had on Wednesday night, Thursday morning. I said, hey, nothing has changed. Fasusi is still coming on the April 25th, and he's coming on June 13th through the 15th for an official visit. Within a matter of 12 hours, OU and Fasusi got together and said, you know what? I think I'm going to come up and visit Oklahoma again. So that begs the question, does that nix the April 25th visit? And Fasusi's answer, Parker, no, it doesn't. That April 25th visit is still on. And so I got a bunch more quotes on OU Insider and all that. Some information about the official visit, information about where things stand, certain teams and all that type of stuff. So you can go over there. But what do we make of that? I know you and I have talked to some people since the visit. I am talking to Fasusi tomorrow. But what do you make of it?
Listen, here's what matters the most in my eyes. In having some conversations in the aftermath of Fasusi's visit, what I have been told is that Oklahoma's going to play ball in the NIL department with Fasusi to a much greater extent than I imagined they would. And I think this speaks to, being SEC ready. And it was a $4 million payroll last year as far as NIL is concerned. Oklahoma's getting ready to more than double that. And so the ceiling overall for what they're willing to dish out is going to increase. But I'll put it this way. I know Texas's number for Fasusi, and I know Oklahoma is willing to go above and beyond that number. So what I don't know is whether that's going to be good enough to beat out Missouri, because that's an entirely different conversation. Missouri is spending money completely indiscriminately right now.
Texas A&M of the North.
So while I am confident that Oklahoma is going to be on equal or perhaps even better footing as far as NIL with Texas, I have no idea how they're going to stack up with Missouri, because Missouri is one of those schools that can and probably will come along once they get wind of whatever the leading offer is to a guy like Fasusi, and they're going to blow it away. In general, like they've done it time and again, and who's to say they won't do it again with another 5-star offensive tackle in Fasusi? And gosh, here's the thing. Here's what I really think they're making them play for is I think Missouri is trying to make a statement in the state of Texas specifically by going in and trying to land not just Fasusi, but Lamont Rogers, two of the best offensive tackles, unquestionably, in one of the best offensive line classes that the state of Texas has seen in recent memory. That's what Missouri wants to do. And like it or not, they have the capacity to make that happen. What it's going to come down to, I think, and this is where you kind of trust. And if you listen to the interview that we did with Marcus Wimberly, you listen to some of the stuff that Malik Hawkins and Trent Wilson said about their commitment to Oklahoma, I think that's where you kind of have to trust the structure and the culture that OU has in place and hope. Like you have to trust that, and you have to hope that either Fasusi and or Ty Haywood, Rogers, Andrew Babel, one of those 5-star offensive tackles is going to be willing to make the decision for more than the highest bidder, because I do not trust that Oklahoma is going to be the outright highest bidder for any of these guys. What I would tend to believe is that there will be at least one of those players that's willing to take a discount, if you will, based on everything that Oklahoma can offer, not just in terms of on-field development, but off-field support.
That's fair. I kind of agree with you. I still lean towards, if you ask me which 5-star offensive lineman Oklahoma has the best chance with, and again, you and I discussed this when I was driving down here all over the phone, and I still lean Ty Haywood. I do. It's just talking to people in that Denton area, which I did today, they still feel like Oklahoma's the team to beat there. And so you and I both kind of agree that we seriously doubt Oklahoma gets 2. Now, if they were going to get 2, I will say this. If they were able to get 2, I think at the end of the day, the other one would be Andrew Babaloa out of Kansas City. That because Parker, I just do not see Oklahoma going into DFW and just swooping in and taking both 5 stars. And then on top of that, remember, they're in a lot better position with Lamont Rogers than they first were when we started discussing it, even in March. And there's a whole story behind that we're not going to publicly dive into, but what it does is it just certifies your point and confirms it. Oklahoma playing ball when it comes to NIL. And that was the niche and the holdup, right? With Lamont Rogers to begin with, was loves Oklahoma, loves the staff, but Missouri, LSU, and the rest of the clan were starting to offer a lot more money. He visits Oklahoma shortly after the Under Armour game, or the Under Armour camp, and all of a sudden we're hearing Oklahoma's got more of a chance than first thoughts to close in on that thing. And I think it correlates with Fasusi, right? You're muted.
Here's what's interesting to me. What are Ty Haywood's top schools right now?
Oklahoma. He didn't like, I won't say that because I don't want to make people mad. But you know the school I was gonna say.
Yeah.
In Oklahoma.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I guess in a general sense, he's kind of been all over the place.
Yeah,
I
Alabama was the other one that I always think of.
Yeah, but
when
he
it comes to
he
him.
was just out of USC. He's going to OV to
Yep.
UCLA, which is weird.
Yep.
Alabama is obviously right there in the thick of things along with OU. I guess my point in illustrating that is that's probably one that's quite a ways off from getting decided. I think that
Correct.
decision probably happens on a slower timetable than the others. But what are the 4 schools in play for Michael Fasusi?
Cha-ching,
Seriously
cha-ching,
in play.
cha-ching, cha-ching. Okay,
Like,
Texas, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Missouri.
and what are the 4 schools in play for Lamont Rogers more so than anybody else?
Texas, Oklahoma, LSU, Texas A&M. No? Or
Not
Missouri.
Missouri?
Excuse me. Missouri.
No
Missouri.
Missouri?
Yeah, I always forget Missouri.
Because
Yeah.
I was going to say,
But those are the 5. I know those are the 5 with
that's the
him.
common denominator right there for me
Yep.
between Fasusi and Rogers. OU, Texas, A&M, and Missouri. And like we
Mhm.
know
But
that,
LSU's in there with Lamont Rogers pretty high too, by the way.
sure. But I guess what I'm saying is that right there says something. And I don't know what exactly you interpret it as, but there are 2 distinct ways to interpret it. And
Go
either
ahead and you
way, it
say
says
it.
something pretty significant for Oklahoma. Either it says Bill Bedenbaugh and OU can establish a foothold in a recruitment of an elite offensive tackle prospect in which everybody else is coming to the table with very sizable NIL offerings. And if that's how you interpret it, you have to give it up to Bill Bedenbaugh and the sole mission and everything that OU is about, the very fabric of the program. Or you can look at it this way. OU is every bit as competitive in the NIL department as those aforementioned schools, Texas, Texas A&M, Missouri, 3 schools that are competing on the highest level right now for any prospect you can think of with regard to NIL. So really the only 2 ways you can interpret the Fasusi and Rogers recruitments and OU standing in them are either Bill Bedenbaugh and culture are real and they keep OU in those fights, or OU's got money. OU has the bags.
Yeah, and we'll discuss they can have the bags here in just a minute. I the one thing I will add to that is I was talking to somebody the other day and I asked, when are these discussions going to start taking place as far as NIL? And it seems like across the board in all of college football, sans Missouri, A&M, Texas, and Oregon, like those seem to be the teams that kind of differ, and I guess USC, that differ from the rest of the college football world. You have a mass grouping of college football programs that will not touch the NIL offer sheet until it gets closer to decision time because they don't want to set the price up too early and allow a bidding war to price everybody out, essentially. So, does that make sense?
Yes.
Like they're trying to come in late with it. And I know.
You know what I think about with that?
What's that?
Well, obviously DJ Hicks comes to mind, but so too does Williams Winery because we all got caught up in the final few days of that
Lesson learned.
We forget like in April it was OU in Tennessee, and then in May it was OU in Oregon, and then in June it was OU in Georgia, and then July it was still pretty much OU Georgia till the very end of the month, and then boom, here comes Missouri. And nobody saw that coming.
So I think it's smart because it doesn't give enough. What it does is it doesn't give a lot of time for some of these programs to continue to outbid you. And on the same token, it makes the relationship more of a priority, because when that money starts being thrown around, and then the team that maybe you have an okay relationship, let's make the example of Missouri. Say they have an okay relationship, which is generally what you hear a lot, is like, I really love the campus, the coach is pretty cool, I'm going to go check them out. And then you hear buzz of the NIL offers, right? Like that's been kind of the way it's gone. But then you have the Oklahomas of the world, the Alabamas of the world, the Ohio States, the Georgias, the Notre Dames of the world that really, Clemson's, that really build the relationships, right? There's a foundation laid on and off the field. If you can hold off on the NIL, and then you start throwing you right, like maybe a week, maybe even 3 days, 4 days before a decision's made, you say, okay, this is what we're going to pay you. It just puts more onus on the relationship part, right? And everything else that recruiting used to be about, instead of, well, coach, 6 months ago you said you were gonna pay me this, and now this team's saying they're gonna pay me this. What are you gonna do? Because when they said they were gonna pay me this, I started building a bigger relationship. If you already have that relationship intact and it's way better than everybody else, and you may be $200,000 less a year, but the kid's still making $400,000, $300,000, chances are he's going to choose the relationship and the potential development and the $300,000 than over the $500,000.
Well,
And so
it depends on the kid, and it also depends on the
but
parents.
also that is
as we've
correct.
learned in the past.
Yes, and I was going to say, but there's always going to be a small select few, right? There's not a whole lot of them, Parker. There's still majority, and you see that with Oklahoma's recruiting classes, right? Over the last few years, more kids still lean towards the comfortability than
Yeah.
they do the dollars,
Yeah, but
because
then
they
again,
see the bigger picture, or they have parents that see the bigger picture.
and I think
And
you're
I think
right.
that's the key.
I think the kids lean toward the comfort relationally being known, or I guess just knowing that, they go somewhere like Oklahoma, they're going to be supported on and off the field. They're going to be developed,
Mhm.
all that good stuff.
And
But
they're still making money. Good
yes,
money.
let me ask you this. If you take the parents out of the equation, are DJ Hicks and
Oh,
Williams Winery Sooners right now?
I will comment on Winery and say yes.
It's like, no,
I am
legit, like,
not diving into the DJ Hicks deal. One, because of my relationship with that whole side. And I still think the parents are really good people.
oh, like,
But
look,
at the end of the yeah, at the end of the day, because, well, you know how that goes. Like, if I was to sit and say absolutely, then it becomes a bashing of the parents for no reason other than
I don't think so. Like,
they.
here's the way I look at it. Like, parents probably, in general, are a
Oh,
lot
they
more.
ruin a lot of things.
Well, like, there are some
Adults in the
parents.
room ruin more than anything else,
Oh
man.
man,
Let's
there are
just
some
call it what
parents
it
that have
is.
absolutely ruined things for their kids,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's not in reference to the Hicks family or the Winery family. Like, I'm thinking on a completely
Just
different scale.
broad in
There are
general.
some
Like, we've
parents.
seen some crazy things.
Yeah, but look, I think generally parents are going to be more moved by money than kids because they have more context for it, right? Like,
Yep.
they've lived a lot longer on the earth. They understand how much more money a couple extra $100,000 actually is. And so, like, look, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, whatever, like, a parent that kind of compels their kid to make a decision for the sake of more money is, or like, has compromised their morals or whatever. Like, look, if that's what you want to make the decision for, I can't fault you. Like, that's life-changing money. But it's
Mm-hmm.
just another angle that you got to consider when you're talking about high value NIL recruitments. Is it's not only about whether the kid is going to be willing to, quote unquote, take a discount, but is that something that the parents are going to be on board with too?
No, no, yes. And it's also, are you going to look at are you going to go in with a 3-year plan or a 15-year plan? Because if you go in with the 15-year plan, you're going to look at the development far more than you are how much you're going to pay me over the next 3 years before I go to the NFL. Because if you really value, particularly offensive line, like let's call it what it is. If you really value offensive line and really want to go to the league and be a potential first round draft pick, outside of maybe Notre Dame, and who else would I even throw in that category? Who else would you throw in that category with Oklahoma? Alabama? Outside of those two, who's developing offensive line the way Oklahoma is over the years? Who's getting first rounders like Beanbo or day 1, day 2 guys?
Penn State. There's another school I would
Penn
throw.
State's that's another good one. So there's a select few that could have that argument, but even when you go with that argument, you go to Oklahoma and you look at who has the most money cumulatively as far as salaries goes, and it ain't close. Oklahoma's developed some cats in the NFL, bro. Just straight dudes. So, I mean, that's how you have to look at some of those things. So, but to each his own, right? His, her own, parents' own, whatever. Everybody's life is different. Everybody's decision is different. And that's why recruiting is such a crapshoot sometimes. You never know the circumstance of what the kids come from. And so you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. And the decisions they make are the decisions they make. Real quickly, 2026 4-star quarterback Dereon Coleman out of Florida will be at Oklahoma. We're recording this on Friday. He was there all day today. He arrived around 10 a.m. in Oklahoma City, around 11 a.m. in Norman. He will leave at 5 p.m. tomorrow, or Saturday, after touring the stadium, the locker room, the campus, all of that. But I talked to his trainer, and I talked to Dereon tonight. And you wake up in the morning, if you see some future casts put in, let's just say there's a reason. So
Heck,
I
we've
don't
already had
wanna,
our future cast in for a while. I'm
have
pretty sure
we?
I
I
put mine.
can't.
Yeah, you.
Hold
I
on.
know you put yours in probably about a month ago. I
Okay.
put mine in the day after he got the offer.
Yeah. So
I'd
yeah.
talk to him. I'd talk to the trainer. I'd talk to some folks around. Like, I felt very confident very early about where
Let me
that
help
one was
Oklahoma
at.
fans real quick. I'll tell Coach. Oh my gosh. I will tell uh Coach Balin, his quarterback trainer. I will tell the story that he told me today. I know that some know, if you're on OU Insider, you kind of know this story. I'm going to tell it. You got it from Dereon. I'm going to tell it from the trainer's perspective real quick, because it's really neat. So they went up to, he started training Dereon at 10 years old. They go to a camp, he said, Plant City, Lake City, somewhere around there, a few hours away from where they're at. And they went out to eat. I think he said they went out to Saltgrass or something like that, or Texas Roadhouse. And they went to the store, and just so happened they were looking at the hat store, and there was like this gray hat that just kind of stood out more than anything else. And it was right after OU won the Big 12 with Kyler Murray. Was it Kyler Murray? Yeah, it was Kyler Murray. And Kyler Murray was already Dereon's favorite player. Okay. He's also a big Caleb Williams fan. Loved Caleb Williams, Oklahoma version of it more than anything else. Like, he's very adamant about it. And they walk over to that hat, and he just kind of picked up and said, you keep working at it. You're talented enough. You could be playing at a place like this when it's your time. And he said, so that was always kind of the goal. That was always kind of what they brought up, was that hat every time they would talk and every time they would do something. So Dereon's whole life as far as training was to get that OU offer. So you all take that with a grain of salt. And I have a really cool story about the trip that I'm going to post on OU Insider that is just awesome. Like, if you don't, it is one of the cooler stories that I've ever heard from a recruit and the people that took him, of what it did to that kid and that trainer. And they called it a surreal moment at that point in time and how it was done. But that's going to go over on OU Insider VIP. It's a tease. I'm sorry, but it is awesome. And we'll talk about if he's going to return, Parker, on OU Insider, because don't be shocked if he shows up sometime soon. Let's just put it that way again. So, and that's not the only visit that's going to take place if that happens. So we're going to talk about it on OU Insider VIP. I got a story coming, but I did want to dive into that. What are your thoughts on that visit?
I mean, a lot of what you just laid out, Brandon, went into my decision to drop the future cast so early on in the process for Dereon Coleman, just because it was very, very apparent as soon as that offer came down that was the one he'd been waiting for. That was likely where he's going to end up. And look, nothing is a sure thing in recruiting, but I don't pull the trigger on a future cast that early unless I feel like it's as close to a sure thing as you're going to get. And to me, Dereon
Yep.
Coleman has always, like, despite the hefty OU buzz that was generated this past week after Jaden O'Neal's visit, it's just kind of felt for a while, really ever since the kid got the offer, like Dereon Coleman was going to be Oklahoma's guy in the class of 2026. I have not seen or heard or experienced anything that would dissuade me from that opinion.
Yep.
I think it's very evident that this is a kid that is about the right stuff, and he's going to embrace the grind, and he's got a good circle of people around him. Balin Trujillo, his trainer, obviously trains
Yep.
a number of very talented quarterbacks, and has for a while. He's had pupils that have gone on to play high end college football at the Power Five level, Group of Five, FCS. He is, he's very well known in that region of the state of Florida for the level that I guess he can get his players or his proteges to rise to. And so having a guy like that in your corner for Dereon Coleman, that's going to be huge. And it's also clear he's just got a lot of positive influences in his life that are not, like, they're content to just let this kid make his own decision at his own pace. And that's always great to see when you got a kid that you kind of know and sense, okay, like, he's the one pulling all the strings here. This is in his hands. He'll have people that speak into it, no doubt. But in the end, like, especially because it's such an important position on the field, like, there's so much invested, both literally and figuratively, into the recruitment of quarterbacks. It's great to know you got a quarterback here that doesn't have a handler or anything like that. This is just a kid that went in as a sophomore at Jones High School in Orlando, beat out a 4-star senior that was committed to go play football in the SEC for the starting job, lit it up, wound up with close to 24 offers come the offseason, and just has always wanted to be an Oklahoma Sooner. And when it comes time to make that decision, he's going to have the full authority from everybody around him. He's going to have everybody's green light to just go ahead and pull the trigger. And I feel confident that that day comes for Oklahoma in the recruitment of Dereon Coleman.
The phrase manifest destiny almost comes to mind when it comes to Dereon Coleman, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's essentially what this has been. And he is, if and when that decision comes for Oklahoma with Coleman, will by far be one of the fan favorites automatically, just because his story is so cool. Like, A kid from Florida just wants to be a Sooner, and that's all he's wanted to be his whole life. Like that's pretty rad, man. That's pretty rad because it's very unheard of down there.
Well, yeah,
So,
and you get it for a kid like Ethan Downs that's from Weatherford, right?
right.
It's the short drive down I-40. This kid's from Orlando, Florida. And and here was the one thing that, and in my initial few conversations with Dereon and people in his camp, that the very day that he got the offer, the one thing I was skeptical of was, okay, like, is OU really the dream school? Can it really be the dream school? He's from
Yep.
Orlando. Like, this is just not something that you typically see. It makes a ton of sense for somebody up in Tulsa, or somebody down in Lawton, or somebody out in McAllister like Eric McCarty. Okay, like
Mhm.
that type of kid, naturally they dream of playing Sooner football one day. But when push comes to shove, does the kid feel that strong of an attraction to the University of Oklahoma that he's willing to pretty much put every other school on the back burner in order to pursue his dream and take seriously his dream of being an Oklahoma Sooner? And very quickly, the answer that I got from pretty much everybody I talked to was, yeah, no, this is legit. Like, this
Mhm.
is not just kid giving lip service to Oklahoma and what they've done with quarterbacks over the years. This is legitimately a kid that has every desire, and has for a while, to play football at Oklahoma. It's just really cool.
And you want to know the other funny thing about their trip is so they landed in Oklahoma City and they were like, okay, how far do we have to drive to get to Norman? And when they found out it was like 20 minutes from the airport, they were like, what the hell? Because that's everybody, Parker, you and I both know this because we deal with recruiting every day. When people come in, they're like, okay, we're going to have to drive in like the middle of nowhere to get to Norman. And like, they just don't realize that it's in like this big metropolitan area. And so I think that was another comfort for them coming from Orlando, right? That they're going to be in an area that is very similar to Orlando in size. So that was kind of funny to me too. But they were actually shocked about how much Oklahoma City Thunder stuff was out right now compared to OU stuff. He's like, I thought there would be a lot more Boomer Sooner throughout all the airport, but it was like OKC Thunder this, OKC Thunder that. And so I had to explain to him, I'm like, they're tied for first in the West. So like going into the playoffs, they're kind of a big deal right now. So anyways, speaking of basketball, how about that transition?
Very nice.
Segue.
Well done.
Um, let's talk some portal basketball before we close this thing out. Oklahoma basketball has bags and NIL. What's going on, bro? What's going on?
Yeah, well, and look, I feel as though most have put this together, but for those that haven't, you're not this deep in the Brandon Garrison recruitment if you don't have some strong NIL behind you. And the Sooners are deep in that thing. They're hosting him this weekend. And again, Brody Lusk has a lot more color to add for members over at OUinsider.com. But yeah, the Sooners have really ponied up with Brandon Garrison big time. And I feel like all of Sooner Nation, like, if this comes to fruition,
Mm-hmm.
everybody that has any sort of stake, whether fan or donor or otherwise, is going to look at Oklahoma's acquisition of Brandon Garrison and go, that's what we've been waiting on right there. Because that's what can take Oklahoma to the next level as a basketball team. They have had strong backcourt play in years past. They had strong backcourt play this year. It wasn't elite, but it was strong. It was good
Yeah.
enough to potentially make a run in the tournament. Where they were lacking was in the paint, in the front court. And you get a former 5-star guy in Brandon Garrison that can just kind of be your rock down there, then yeah, you got something. Especially if and when Jalen Moore returns to this team. Sam Godwin's coming back. Luke Northweather will have some things to work on in the offseason to continue to unlock certain aspects of his game. But if the Sooners can piece together a competent front court, I feel good about the guard play being where it needs to be in order to get this team to the tournament and potentially go relatively deep in the tournament. Now, Sean Padula, to me, I said it last week, that's the guy you got to have. There is no excuse to not land Sean Padula. There is certainly an excuse not to land Brandon Garrison, and obviously, like, Oklahoma's in a good position to do that. But if he doesn't wind up a Sooner, you kind of understand it. If Sean Padula gets away, man, that's a tough pill to swallow. But as of right now, everything points toward the Sooners being able to lock that one down, and that will be huge because you're only going to get 1 year of him. But I would venture to guess the 1 year you get is going to be a prolific year. Now, I still think they need another backcourt piece. If you get Padula, that's great. That's a start. I feel like you need one more. Kevin Overton.
Dayton Forsythe, baby.
Well, and I love Dayton.
I still think he's going to play a lot.
Oh, he will absolutely play next year.
Oh, yeah, he's going to be stud.
Yeah. Now, is he ready to start immediately? That's probably not something you want to put on a true freshman. You have a couple of returning backcourt guys in Caden Cooper and Jacob Cole that you can toy around with. But again, do you want to bank on those guys being ready to jump into a full-time starting role? Maybe not. And so I think it serves Oklahoma well to go out there and add another proven backcourt piece. To me, it's as simple, like if you land Padula, if you land Overton, if you land Garrison, if there is a world where you can get all three of those guys, that right there is a tournament team next year, provided they stay healthy. Like, you have the pieces to go to the NCAA tournament. I believe the Sooners would if they got those three.
Is that with the idea that Jalen Moore returns? Correct.
It is kind of predicated on that assumption. Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to throw that out there for fans that are like, okay, well, what about the rest? Well, Jalen Moore is doing the combine stuff, but he's doing it under the guise of no agent. He's just getting his name out there. And from what Brody Lusk on OU Insider has told everybody, it seems like his plan is to return to Norman following that and finish his career at Oklahoma. So we'll see how it plays out. Obviously, he's not in the transfer portal, so that's good. I don't know when that closes up for them, but the longer it lasts before he enters, the better it is for Oklahoma, right? I think that's essentially everything.
Well, and he's not getting in the transfer portal. Like, for him, it's come back to Oklahoma or it's get drafted in the NBA.
Yeah, but he's not going to get drafted.
Yeah, well, and I don't think so.
Not yet.
I don't think so either. But it is a really weak draft class. So
that's fair. That's fair. It is. It's bad.
Who knows? Bad. Maybe he decides to pull an Austin Reeves and figure, you know what? Even if I don't get drafted, I can go sign a 2-way contract and work my way onto an NBA roster. The hope, just like it was for Austin Reeves, is that he has a long and successful NBA career after he comes back to OU for one more season.
Yeah. Stay out of the Cooper Flag draft is probably ideal. So that is a deep draft, by the way. All right. There you have it. Everything in a nutshell that we can cover on this podcast without really ruining it for our members. I'm going to talk to Fasusi soon. And when I do, we're going to find out just how much this visit changed things for Oklahoma. And that'll be over there on OU Insider VIP. So if you're not a member, give us a try. Like, this information we're giving you just scratches the surface of what our members know. And that right there alone, we hope, entices you enough to go over there and at least give us a try. Look, it's only $9.95 a month, right? That's a trip to Starbucks for a lot of people. And it's worth it. You get a whole month of OU information as the spring game's rolling and coming to an end. Evaluation period starts, and then official visits start up soon after. So the next 3 months, April, May, June, are going to be wild. And then you throw in July, at the end of July, well, the end of June, Champion Barbecue to finish things out. July starts, you get a little break for like a week or two where it's kind of quiet, and then bam, SEC Media Days, bam, Party in the Palace, bam, fall camp. Boom, boom, boom. And then we get rolling into that SEC stuff, covering practices every day, post practice interviews, practice viewing sessions where we have video, camera. We do live updates while we're watching the practice. You get to know what we see right then and there and know what's going on. Who's not playing, who's injured, who did this, who did what, why they did this, why they did that. All of that happens on OU Insider VIP with our members. Then you'll get the coverage of the season. You'll get the coverage of National Signing Day, both of them. You'll get the coverage of the transfer portal if you sign up for a whole year. You'll get the coverage of basketball going into the SEC, all the way up to this point right here. $99.95 will get you all the way up to this point right here in 2025. Or again, like I said, you can give us a try. $9.95, not even $10. $9.95. One trip to Starbucks can get you a whole month. Just give us a try. If you like us, up it to the year. And that way you don't have to worry about it again. And you get all the OU information. You get to be around thousands and thousands and thousands of OU fans on a daily basis that are already in. We have posters on our site that know more than 99.9% of the people because they know people within the program and they have information that they throw out there all the time, sometimes before we even know it. Like, it's crazy. And then we have to go backtrack and try to confirm that rumor or this or that. And that's all over there on OU Insider. It's fun. Softball, baseball, basketball, recruiting. It's all covered right there. OU Insider VIP. Also, if you want to be updates to every video, every podcast, anything, football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, softball, it's all right here. OU Insider, YouTube, and or any platform you want to listen to OU Insider podcasts. Make sure you hit the like, make sure you hit the subscribe button and that bell down there to make sure you're notified every time a video and or podcast is dropped. All right, for Parker Thune, my name is Brendan Drum. That's going to do it for this version of OU Insider Under the Visor podcast. You guys have a blessed day.